welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is Brewing with Underwhelming Commanders, episode 32. And just a little note about the poll that I made for the last video. I don't know if anyone noticed, but I had a couple requests on a video I made. I made a video called Commanders that I think have gotten a lot better in the last year. And on that video, I had a couple of requests for the Commanders on that video. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to take the Commanders from that video and use them in the poll for my next Underwhelming Commanders video? So that's what I did. And again, for all those who are new to the series, there is a poll in the description below. There always is for every video in this series. So you can go vote on what's going to be featured in the next Underwhelming Commanders video. But coming in third place this time is Heliod, God of the Sun. 3 and a white, legendary enchantment creature god. 5/6. It's indestructible as long as your devotion to white is less than 5. Heliod isn't a creature. Other creatures you control have vigilance, and you can pay 2 white, put a 2/1 white cleric enchantment creature token onto the battlefield. So there's a lot of great things here to build around, I think. First of all, you have a commander that is an indestructible enchantment, and in my experience, you actually don't want your commander becoming a creature. It's actually better if they don't. For all those people who've ever played against Purphoros decks will know, as long as Purphoros stays an enchantment, it's really difficult to get him off the table, right? Indestructible enchantments are hard to get rid of in the format. Indestructible creatures, not nearly as much, right? So even though turning your commander into a 5/6 indestructible creature can seem good, you're building around the other abilities, so leaving it as an enchantment actually can a lot of times be better because your opponents will have a really hard time getting rid of it. Other creatures you control have vigilance is great too, right? Just giving all your creatures vigilance is really, really handy in the commander format. I say it all the time, it's one of the most underrated abilities in my opinion. The reason why is because you can just easily get in for damage, right? You can chip in for some damage and you don't have to worry about the swing back. A lot of times people will forego attacking even though they can because their creatures will be tapped and now they won't be able to block and your opponents will be getting in for damage. So just the ability of I give all my creatures vigilance is really, really handy to have. It makes your choices for attacking a lot easier. Now, are you going to build around that? I don't really think so. If you did some digging, I suppose you could find some creatures that want to be untapped all the time, but to me, that's just an added bonus. What we're going to build around is definitely going to be that last ability there of creating those 2/1 cleric enchantment creature tokens. And as I mentioned in that video, there has been so much great support in mono white even, and in a lot of other colors as well, but just specifically in mono white for a token theme. Of course, we got Benny Brax, which is going to draw us a card if we've created a token on any turn at the end step, and Ellen Harbree's Busybody, very recently from Baldur's Gate, 3 and a white human peasant 2/4. You can tap and look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of tokens you created this turn. Put one of those into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. So if we can create a bunch of tokens on a turn, that's great, but at worst case scenario, this is tap to draw a card if we've created a token, right? You're going to look at the top card of your library and then put it into your hand. Simple as that. Seems pretty good here. Idol of Oblivion will work very similarly, right? Another card that just goes in all those token themes. Whenever we create a token, we can just tap it to draw a card. Divine Visitation, which of course just got a reprint in Double Masters. Whenever we make those cleric tokens, they're actually going to be 4/4 White Angel tokens with flying and vigilance, so that's pretty good. That can be a way to help close out the game. Grand Crescendo is a great one from New Capenna. X white instant, create X 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. So this is a great token maker. We can do it at instant speed, and it's also a way to save your creatures. This is a really great spell overall, I think. Of course, we're going to want mainstays like Intangible Virtue, Anointed Procession. These are obviously going to be great in any token theme. Rumor Gatherer as well from New Capenna is going to be great here. 1 white elf wizard 2/1. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, draw a card instead. So no token theme here at all, but we will be having creatures enter the battlefield all the time. Worst case scenarios, we get a scry 1. That's not too bad, right? We create that token, we get a scry 1. And I know people will think, hey, pay 4 mana just to scry 1 seems bad, but don't forget, we're going to have a bunch of these effects in play, right? So you're going to pay 4 mana, create a token, and then you're going to get to maybe draw a card, scry 1, get some other effects as well. There will be enough payoff, I think, in this deck to make it totally worth your while. Twilight Drover is great here, right? Whenever a creature token leaves the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Twilight Drover. So any of those tokens we have, when they leave the battlefield, this guy will get bigger, and then we can pay 2 and a white to remove a +1/+1 counter to create 2 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. So just, again, a fantastic card in any white token theme. I like Extricator of Sin here. 2 and a white human cleric 03. When Extricator of Sin enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another permanent. So we got all those tokens lying around. It'll be very easy to sacrifice one of those. If you do, put a 3/2 colorless Eldrazi horror creature token onto the battlefield. So now we're going to exchange a 2/1 creature for a 3/2 creature. I think that's a decent upgrade. Has Delirium. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, you can transform it. And on the back, it's a colorless Eldrazi horror 3/5. Eldrazi you control have vigilance. Don't really need that since our commander gives our creatures vigilance. However, you can pay 2 and tap, sacrifice a non-Eldrazi creature, create a 3/2 colorless Eldrazi horror token. So again, we can just swap out our cleric tokens or any of our other tokens for 3/2 tokens, more menacing ones, right? I really like Requiem Angel here. Whenever another non-spirit creature you control dies, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So again, all those cleric tokens or any other tokens we're making, as long as they're not spirits, Requiem Angel will replace them. So even if someone just cast a board wipe, our Requiem Angel's there, all our token creatures are there. We'll get completely blown out, but all of our token creatures that we lose will get replaced with 1/1 spirit tokens. That seems pretty good. Let's not forget that those tokens are indeed enchantments. That is very important here as well, and something else we can build around. The Constellation mechanic will work fantastically here, like Skybind or Archon of Sun's Grace. Whenever Skybind or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, exile target non-enchantment permanent, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. We can use this on our stuff if we want to blink our stuff. We can blink our opponent's stuff if we want to get something out of the way for the turn. Archon of Sun's Grace is particularly good here because whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, we get to create a 2/2 white Pegasus creature token with flying. And of course, it's going to give those Pegasus tokens lifelink. So now we create a token with our commander. We'll get a 2/2 white Pegasus token as well because that's an enchantment entering the battlefield. And of course, they're tokens, so they're going to fit with everything else we're doing. Fantastic fit in this deck, I think. The tokens are also clerics, so we could throw some cleric tribal in this stuff. Battletide Alchemist is my personal favorite. 3 white Kithkin Cleric 3/4. If a source would deal damage to a player, you may prevent X of that damage, where X is the number of clerics you control. This card could go in almost any deck. Seriously, Battletide Alchemist is a cleric, so at the very worst, you're going to be preventing 1 damage from a source of your choosing, right? You can use this on your opponents as well, actually. You can prevent damage to them if you want to. You can use this in sort of a politics way. The more clerics we have in play, though, we can really start preventing tons and tons of damage to ourselves or our opponents if we want to be nice. Master Apothecary, I think, is another interesting one. Tap an untapped cleric you control, prevent the next 2 damage that we dealt to any target this turn. So this is any target. We can prevent damage to our creatures as well. You're just tapping any of your clerics that might just be sitting around anyway, and don't forget, our clerics have vigilance, right? So again, we can attack with them on our turn, and then on our opponent's turn, if they're attacking, we can block, tap some of them down to prevent damage, or just don't block and prevent the damage to ourselves. I think this is a really handy one in the deck. I also threw Sacred Mesa in here, again, just because we have a lot of those if you created a token this turn effects in here, and Sacred Mesa really is one of the best token makers in the entire game. Just 1 and a white to create a Pegasus creature token. We can really spit them out with this. At the beginning of our upkeep, we have to sacrifice it unless we sacrifice a Pegasus, but we don't really care so much about that. As long as we have 1 Pegasus token around, we can sacrifice it. The more important part is the creating a token on your turn, right? It can very easily fulfill that with Sacred Mesa. I also threw Welcoming Vampire in here. Again, just another fantastic draw effect for a token theme, even though it's not dealing with tokens at all, but our creatures that we're creating are almost assuredly going to be power 2 or less, whether it be from our commander or some of the other token making effects. And I threw Thran Turbine in here as well, just giving you that 2 colorless mana on your upkeep that we can use for our commander's ability, right? That is a little mana intensive, 4 mana. So with the Thran Turbine, we get the 2 colorless mana on our upkeep. We can use it for our commander's ability. We only have to pay the 2 white to spit out that cleric token. So lots of great stuff there to help you build a successful Heliod God of the Sun deck, I think. But moving on to number 2, and this is a a really challenging one. Oviya, Pashiri, Sage Lifecrafter. This is a tough one for sure. 1 green mana, Human Artificer, 1/2. Pay 2 and a green. Tap, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. Pay 4 and a green. Tap, create an XX colorless construct artifact creature token where X is the number of creatures you control. So I suppose the good thing here is that our commander sort of has the win con stapled on it. That's always good. If you can get like 12 or 15 creatures out, now you can create like a 12/12 construct that you can swing with. So that's all right. This is a very mana intensive commander, no question. Luckily, we're in green, so that part is going to be a little bit built into the pie here. We can definitely bring down the cost of our commander's ability. Again, Thran Turbine works here as well, where we're getting that 2 colorless mana to use with either the first or the second ability. The only downside is you got to do it during your upkeep. Heartstone will work here as well, right? I talked about this recently in my best cards from Stronghold, and this is why. I didn't add it to the Heliod because I thought Heliod would probably be more likely an enchantment and not a creature, and this is activated abilities of creatures cost 1 less to activate, so might not work with the Heliod. You could give it a try if you want to. Will definitely work here though, reducing our commander's activated ability costs. Of course, you gotta have 1,000-Year Elixir in here. It's gonna let us use our commander's ability right away. We can untap it and use it again. Obviously gonna be mana intensive, but again, we're in green, so maybe just put lots of ramp in this deck so you can activate the ability a bunch. You're in a couple of themes here. You're in an artifact theme. That's definitely the tough part here. Green doesn't do artifacts very well. The more important part is the token theme. Parallel Lives, Second Harvest, right? So now we can double up the tokens that we're making, make it a little bit more worth it. I really like Trading Post in this deck, and here's why. We are making artifact creatures, which means that Trading Post last 2 abilities we can use, right? We can sacrifice our tokens as artifacts and draw a card, or we can sacrifice them as creatures and return an artifact card from our graveyard to your hand. So we're going to be using both. I mean, you can use all 4 of these. Obviously, Trading Post is just a great card in a commander game anyway, but mostly I think those 2 last abilities we can use either of them by sacrificing our servo tokens. I like Forsaken Monument in this deck. 5 mana legendary artifact. Colorless creatures you control get +2/+2. And of course, we are making colorless creatures, whether they be the servos or the constructs, they will be colorless. So giving them that nice anthem effect is going to be great. Also, whenever you tap a permanent for colorless mana, you get to add an additional colorless mana, and there definitely will be some uses for that. Whenever you cast a colorless spell, you gain 2 life, and there will be probably quite a bit of artifacts in this deck, I imagine, if you're building it. I also thought Golem Artisan would be an interesting fit. You know, I was trying to, again, green doesn't do this well, but I was trying to look for options of boosting our artifact creatures that we're going to be making. We're going to have a lot of artifact creatures in this deck or that we are creating. And this guy will help a little bit. You can pay 2 to give target artifact creature +1/+1 until end of turn, or you can pay 2 to give an artifact creature flying, trample, or haste until end of turn. So that would be an interesting addition here as well. Again, though, we're creating tokens, and we've gotten a lot of great support recently for this. Most notably, 2 background commanders, Halsin, Emerald Archdruid, and Jahiri, Friend of the Forest. So our tokens now with Halsin, we can pay 1 and turn them into 4/4 bears. That seems pretty good. And with Jahiri, we can tap them to add mana, which is great. Again, mana intensive commander, so that's going to be a really, really great one in the deck. Those 2 are absolutely auto includes in this deck. I also really like Killer Service here, another new one that came out in New Capenna. 2 and a green enchantment. When Killer Service enters the battlefield, create a number of food tokens equal to the number of opponents you have. And at the beginning of your end step, you may pay 2 and sacrifice a token. If you do, create a 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token. So again, we can turn those 1/1 servos into 4/4s, a lot more menacing. I also really like Gala Greeters here from New Capenna. It has that alliance ability again. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on Gala Greeters. Create a tap treasure token. You gain 2 life. We're going to be creating tokens. We're going to have creatures entering the battlefield all the time. This is a great way to get some awesome value off of it. Again, Idol of Oblivion, because you're in that token theme. Just another great draw effect. I think Chitter Spitter is a good include here, and I'll explain why. So 2 and a green artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice a token. If you do, put an acorn counter on Chitter Spitter. So obviously we're going to have lots of tokens around that we can sacrifice to put a counter on this. Squirrels you control get +1/+1 for each acorn counter on Chitter Spitter. That doesn't seem very good because we're not in a squirrel theme at all. However, if you just look at this guy on his own, right? If every turn, just once on our upkeep, we sacrifice one of our servos, we're putting a counter on our Chitter Spitter, and then we just pay 1 green mana to create a 1/1 green squirrel token. Fits into the token creation thing, fits into the I have a creature entering the battlefield, all that good stuff. And if we're doing this every turn we're getting a 1/1 green squirrel token, and then we're making the entire team of squirrels bigger by sacrificing something else. So this can very quickly get out of hand if you're in a token theme. If you're not really doing squirrels at all, you're just sacrificing some other token on your upkeep. I think it's a good fit here. Retrofitter Foundry, also a great fit here. 1 mana artifact, pay 3, untap Retrofitter Foundry. So again, mana intensive, but assuming you're going to have a lot of mana, you can pay 2 and tap, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. So that's already cheaper than our commander's ability. More importantly though, pay 1 and tap, sacrifice a servo, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter creature token. So now all these servos that we are creating with our commander, we can then pay 1, sacrifice it, turn into a Thopter, and then we can tap and sacrifice a Thopter to create a 4/4 colorless construct artifact creature token. So again, another way to turn our commander's maybe not so scary ability into a more threatening one. And I also thought Mech Titan Core, again from a new set, Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, was a fantastic fit here because we're creating all those artifact creature tokens, right? 2 mana, artifact, vehicle, 2/4. Pay 5, exile Mech Titan Core and 4 other artifact creature tokens and or vehicles you control. So it's going to be very easy for us, I think, to have 4 artifact token creatures lying around to exile for this effect. And then we're going to create Mech Titan, a legendary 10/10 construct artifact creature token with flying, vigilance, trample, lifelink, and haste. That's all colors. Then when that token leaves the battlefield, return all cards exiled with Mech Titan Core, except Mech Titan Core, to the battlefield tapped under their owner's control, and has crew too. So another great way to turn those not so threatening 1/1 servo tokens into something a little more threatening. And again, it is a construct, it's an artifact creature, so it's going to fit our other themes as well. So this could be a good finisher in this deck. Another very underwhelming commander, no question about it. I mean, it costs 1 mana, that's all right. Not a lot of commanders that cost 1 mana. Other than that, the abilities are super mana intensive and it's not a fast deck at all. But I thought I threw enough sort of win con type of effects in here that you could close out the game with it once you get up to enough servo tokens, right? But moving on to our number 1 commander this week, and it is Fain the Broker. And I will show you the poll here because I had a guy ask me, hey, you should probably just show the poll and see how everything panned out. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually not a bad idea. So here's the poll. This is how you guys voted. Again, the poll is in the description below if you want to vote for the next video. Fain the Broker, not by a lot, came in number 1, 2 and a black human warlock, 3/3. You can tap, sacrifice a creature, put 2/+1/+1 counters on target creature. Tap him, remove a counter from a creature you control, create a treasure token. Tap him, sacrifice an artifact, create a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying. And you can also pay 3 and a black to untap Fain the Broker so that, of course, you can use some of those abilities again. Now, because there is so much going on here, like I mentioned in that video about commanders that have gotten better, this is one that I think has gotten better because there's been a lot of stuff come out recently that fit the different themes that you are doing here. So first things first, Idol of Oblivion, right? We are creating tokens here, whether it be a treasure token or a 2/1 white and black Inkling token. So there's going to be a lot of token creation going on in this deck. So here's the trifecta. Idol of Oblivion goes in all 3 decks from today. Also 1000-Year Elixir, again, because we want to be activating our commander's ability right away. We want to be untapping it, using it again. Magerite Stone will also work this way. Patriarch Seal from the new Battle for Baldur's Gate that I talked about. 3 mana artifact. Tap to add 1 mana of any color, and you can pay 1 and tap to untap target legendary creature you control. Again, this is one of those decks I was talking about. If you have any commander that wants to be tapping to use some ability, Patriarch Seal is a great include in the Mana Rock slot, right? Of course, we got Illusionist Braces as well, so we can double up those abilities. Thornbite Staff is a fantastic fit here because whenever a creature dies, you untap that creature. So if we use the sacrifice ability, right, we sacrifice a creature and then our commander will immediately untap, and we can use another ability or the same ability and keep doing it over and over if we want, if we got a bunch of creatures around to sacrifice. Also, when our opponent's creatures die, right? This is whenever a creature dies, you untap this creature. So if if this is equipped to our commander on our opponent's turns, any of their creatures dying, our commander untaps and we can use its ability on their turn. Rings of Brighthearth, of course, as well, will allow us to double up that activated ability by paying 2. And of course, you absolutely have to have Academy Manufactor. Again, another commander where this guy's an auto include, because whenever we create that treasure token, we're going to get a clue and a food as well. It's going to be very easy for us to have creatures dying. So Morbid Opportunist, Reaper from the Abyss, both going to be great here for drawing cards and destroying our opponent's creatures. We want that trigger at the beginning of each end step. If a creature died, destroy target non-demon creature. It's going to be very easy for us to do that. We can do it on our turn very easily. We can also do it on our opponent's turn if we want. If they play a creature we don't like, we just sacrifice one of our creatures on our turn, and then on the end step, we can destroy the creature that just came out. Obviously, we are in the counter theme as well, right? Kara Lair Scavenger, I thought, was a fantastic fit here. Whenever another creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had one or more counters on it, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. So any of the creatures that we are putting counters on, can also sacrifice them if we want to. Now when they leave the battlefield, we get to draw a card. Nadir, Agent of Dustnell, again, another deck where he's just a fantastic fit for a number of reasons. Whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, you put +1/+1 counters on them. And of course, we can put +1/+1 counters on them with our commander's ability as well. And this is any token. So the treasure tokens, if we sack them, we get a counter on them. The Inkling tokens dying, we get a counter on them. This is such a fantastic fit with Fain. And of course, when he leaves the battlefield, we create a number of 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens equal to his power. So he's fitting everything we're doing here. Fantastic fit. I think Blood Tracker as well, because when Blood Tracker leaves the battlefield, you draw a card for each +1/+1 counter on him. So this is a great target for putting counters on our creatures with our commander's ability. And then obviously we can sack our Blood Tracker as well to our commander's ability if we want to draw a whole ton of cards. I also like Flesh Carver here too, and a black human wizard 2/2 has Intimidate. Pay 1 and a black, sacrifice another creature, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Flesh Carver. So he's doing all the things that we're doing in the deck. The sacrifice, the counters. Also, when he dies, create an XX black horror creature token where X is Flesh Carver's power. So again, that ability is fitting everything we're doing as well, because we can sacrifice him, right? We do have a sacrifice outlet on our commander, and also is a token theme because it's creating a token. This guy fits everything we're doing in the deck as well. I threw Animation Module in here. I thought this was a good fit because whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are placed on a permanent we control, you can pay 1. If you do, create a 1/1 colorless servo token. So now we can use our commander's first ability to sacrifice a creature to put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature, and when we do, we can pay an extra 1 to create a servo token, and then now we have more sack fodder that we can use that ability again, right? Cryptic Trilobite, of course, is just fantastic in this deck. XX Trilobite 00 enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. Remove a +1/+1 counter from Cryptic Trilobite to add 2 colorless. Spend this mana only to activate abilities. Well, geez, maybe we can use that for our commander's untap ability, right? And of course, we can sacrifice a creature, put 2 +1/+1 counters on our Cryptic Trilobite, then remove those counters to add colorless mana, untap our Fain, right? We can really go to town here with this combination. We are removing counters from creatures with our commander's second ability, so the persist mechanic works great here. I have the actual card persist. Of course, that's going to be a fantastic fit, but also Puppeteer Click is a great one as well, right? It has persist, so when it dies, it's going to come back into play with a -1/-1 counter on it, and then we can remove that -1/-1 counter so it will persist again. Undying also works this way. I got Geralf's Messenger. I also have Undying Evil, which we can give any of our creatures Undying with, and then again, we can remove the counter if we want to. Also fits the +1/+1 counter theme as well, and I thought Isareth the Awakener was a fantastic fit here. 1 black human wizard 3/3 with Death Touch. Whenever Isareth the Awakener attacks, you may pay X. When you do, return target creature with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield with a corpse counter on it. If that creature would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. This is just a great recursion effect in the deck. That's it. The reason why it fits here is because for whatever reason, they decided to put the whole corpse counter thing on Isareth. The corpse counter doesn't actually do anything. I don't know why they added it to this ability just for flavor. Nevertheless, it is a counter that is sitting on a creature we control, so we can remove it with our commander's ability to create a treasure token, right? We are in a sacrifice artifact theme as well. So I got Syndicate Trafficker here and Herald of Anguish, both great creatures that want to be sacrificing artifacts or us just having artifacts in play. This isn't a heavy artifact theme, but we will have quite a few. I also got Nadir's Nightblade, another fantastic fit just like Nadir, 2 and a black, elf warrior 1/3. Whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So this is a Blood Artist or Zulaport Cutthroat effect for our tokens. And again, we have the treasure tokens as well as the Inkling tokens. So this counts all of those. But again, the reason why I named Fain in that Commanders That Have Gotten Better video is because of a lot of the new cards that have come out that fit really well, like Grim Hireling, 3 and a black, Tiefling Rogue, 3/2. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create 2 treasure tokens. That's just a great ability in any deck. And remember, we do have those 2/1 flying Inkling tokens that can easily get in for damage. More importantly, pay black, sacrifice X treasures. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn. So that fits with the treasure token theme that we are in here a little bit. Skullport Merchant as well fits that theme because we can pay 1 and a black and sacrifice another creature or a treasure to draw a card. All of the sacrificing, the token creating, the treasures, all of that stuff, this fits. Ruthless Technomancer, 3 and a black human wizard, 2/4. From the Neon Dynasty Commander, when it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature you control. If you do, create a number of treasure tokens equal to the creature's power. The sacrifice theme, the treasure token theme. More to the point though, 2 and a black, sacrifice X artifacts, and this doesn't have to be treasures. It can be the treasures we just created, or it can be other stuff. Return target creature with power X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. X can't be 0. Fantastic fit in this deck, and a lot of decks probably. From Battle for Baldur's Gate, we got Servok Deathbringer, 3 and a black human knight, 3/4. At the beginning of each player's end step, if no permanents left the battlefield this turn, that player loses X life, where X is Servok's power. What a fantastic fit with Fain. First of all, at the beginning of each player's end step, if no permanents left the battlefield, that will never be happening on our turn, right? At the very least, we can sacrifice a treasure token to make sure this doesn't affect us. But more importantly, this works so well with his first ability. Tap, sacrifice a creature, put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature. So now we can pump up Servok's power with our commander's ability. This guy can be a win con in the deck, right? Our opponents are going to have to guarantee that something leaves the battlefield on their turn, because this guy's going to get real big and they're going to lose a ton of life. And then of course, Agent of the Iron Throne, 2 and a black legendary enchantment background that will be going in a whole lot of decks, I imagine, because commander creatures you own have, whenever an artifact or creature you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. And I will point out, because I seem to be getting this question a lot, I'm actually probably going to make a video about it. Tokens dying do go to the graveyard. I had a lot of people comment on my videos where they say, oh, a treasure token going to the graveyard isn't actually going to the graveyard because it ceases to exist. No, it does hit the graveyard. When you sacrifice a treasure token, that is an artifact going to the graveyard. It does hit the graveyard before it ceases to exist. So yes, that will trigger this. And that's probably why it's going to go in a ton of decks, right? Obviously, it's a fantastic fit here because we're going to have lots of artifacts and creatures going to the graveyard. So again, it's going to be another Drain, Blood Artist, win con effect for this deck. So much going on here. It wasn't hard for me to find a whole ton of things that work. Maybe it's doing too much. I don't know. You might want to thin it out a little bit because I'm really going into all of Fain's abilities. I'm doing the sacrifice theme. I'm doing +1/+1 counters, removing counters from our creatures, creating treasure tokens, sacrificing artifacts. I'm doing it all. Is it doing too much? I don't know. I think it's a really interesting deck. Of course, the deck list for it is in the description below. Feel free to check it out. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.